Ustad Zakir Hussain, one of the greatest ever percussionists and musicians in the world, passed away last night. He was 73. His passing has left an unfathomable void in the world of music and in the consciousness of millions of his admirers, including our team at TMB. But earlier this year, in March, my co-host Arijit Barman had the opportunity to catch up with the maestro, fresh from his third Grammy win, and interview him. It is one of the most beautiful conversations we have had on this podcast. And today, we celebrate the legend of Ustad Zakir Hussain by rewinding that episode for you in a special drop. It's Monday, the 16th of December. I'm Anirban Chaudhary. This is the Morning Brief.
So I'm disappointed you're not like a bulbul or buboy or anything like that. I knew somebody was buboi.
Buboi, okay. And it's a man.
A man.
Okay. Do you have a pet name?
No.
Okay.
It's so small anyway, Zakir.
Correct. So everybody, yeah.
There are my friends all over the world. They just call me Z.
Z, okay. So what should I call you? Ustad Ji, Zakir, Z?
Whatever you want, but
Okay.
don't call me Ustad Ji.
Okay, fine.
It becomes too formal.
I know. But I can't call you Z either.
You can call
Zakir
me
also.
Z or, well, you can make it formal by going ZG.
ZG.
And the Grammy goes to.
A very young 72-year-old genius was among the winners in the Best Global Music Performance, Best Contemporary Instrumental Album, and Best Global Music Album categories in this year's Grammy Awards. With 5 awards in all, he has now equaled the tallies with the late sitar maestro Ravi Shankar and the master conductor Zubin Mehta. The awards were given for Pashto, written and recorded in collaboration with American banjo legend, I would say, Bela Fleck, American bassist Edgar Meyer, and Indian flautist Rakesh Chaurasia. The second Grammy for the night was for Best Contemporary Instrumental Album, which he won alongside Fleck, Meyer, and Chaurasia for their eclectic classical meets jazz album, As We Speak. And finally, he also co-won the Best Global Music Album for This Moment, the critically acclaimed comeback of the pioneering world fusion band Shakti. By now, I'm sure you've guessed who this 72-year young genius is. None other than Ustad Zakir Hussain, Zakir or Z. It's the 1st of March. I'm your host, Arijit Barman, and you're listening to Tabla, Tech, and Triumph only on the Morning Brief. Well, it's an honor, Zakir Hussain Saab, for all of us to talk to you in your home in Mumbai. Thank you so much for talking to Economic Times and our podcast, The Morning Brief.
It is a great pleasure to have you in my home, and thank you so very much for making the time to come here, and no thanks for that ballooned introduction.
You fully deserve it. No, but I wanted to start by something I saw recently, a reel of yours. You know, you and your wife were catching, I think, a red-eye flight from Mumbai to LA to receive the award. And you were in the lounge. You shot a brief reel and you posted it on Instagram or in one of your social media handles. I want to start from that. Now, let's focus on Hindustani classical music. 30-second clip, 30-second or many 30-second clips. Is there a place for it in the music that you're so devoted to? Is it beneficial to the classical music that you've perfected for over all these decades?
Well, am I actually making a music statement when I do a 30-second clip? Or am I just sending out some information or a big hello or just a wave of the hand or whatever. And so if you're looking at it being a music statement, obviously 30 seconds is not enough of a time to make that happen. So I imagine the whole point of the Instagram is to be able to keep your friends, your fans, your followers informed as to what's going on with you. And it's a tool that has been given as I would say, a boon to the entertainment industry, because this has helped the artists to develop a fan following or an audience, and it has grown by leaps and bounds in the past 10 years, and it's entirely due to the media platforms that have come forth and have given the opportunity for musicians to be able to promote themselves. I would not post a piece of music on it, a complete piece of music.
Correct.
People do these days something called teasers. I don't know much about that, but I know that the record companies from Shakti Record and as we speak have posted teasers. And I guess the whole plan is to be able to not in any way make people think that this is it, but to make people think
there is more.
There is more, or this is just a window being opened for you to be able to peep in and notice what's there, and then enter and avail yourself of the opportunity to enjoy it.
You used an interesting word. You said it's a boon. Many in your field or would say it's actually a bane because there's no privacy, and that aura or the mystique of the superstar is gone because everything is now recorded. Everyone has a camera.
Well, I mean, you have to realize you have a choice. You post or you don't post. You don't post, you have your privacy. So that's there. Secondly, I think you have to know how to utilize it. I mean, there are artists, in my opinion, who overuse the platforms, posting 4, 5, 6, 7 times a day. And someone like me, for instance, posts maybe 3 or 4 times a week at the most. And so in that sense, you have some control over what your privacy is. I mean, I posted that Delhi thing, and after that I didn't post anything until I got back to India, and then I posted about the award. But by then it was already public knowledge, so it didn't really matter. But I know that there were others who were posting 5, 6, 7 times. They were posting from the venue
Correct.
itself, and I had actually forgotten to bring my phone there, so that was that. So we had to rely on Mr. A.R. Rahman to take a photo of us.
Right. But going back, if we, rewind a bit to the very beginning. Now, Shakti has always been a band which has been scattered around the world. And yet when you perform like a band, it seems there seems to be a central nervous system. Where do your creative process find that common ground?
Shakti is a feeling. It's an emotion. It's a talk without using words. So this Shakti idea has been some kind of a procedure or a system that automatically fell in place from the very first inception of Shakti. And that only happened because the 4 people that got together did not have any boundaries to cross, any fences to break down. I mean, I did not have to worry about if I don't play North Indian tabla and try to play the South Indian way or a jazz way, am I going to be ostracized? So none of those thoughts were in place. It didn't even come into our mind. And when that happens, and there is a willingness to be able to be a part of a unique experience that relies on a collective as opposed to an individual statement. Shakti is one of those kind of music which has energy and electricity. And it didn't happen because that's what we wanted. It happened because that's what we were doing. So when that happens, there is no such thing as, oh, okay, we have to start from scratch again. because each member of the band, even a new member of the band, new inductee into the Shakti fold, is already aware of what's happened. And say someone like Shankar Mahadevan, when he joined us, or U. Srinivas, when they joined us, they were already listening to Shakti for 20 years. They were already involved in watching it perform and wanting to do that and practicing that form of music. So there, it's like me, when I was watching my father play with Ravi Shankar and they were on tour, I was taking in that information and filing it away for the time when my turn comes. And Shankar Mahadevan told me that they only had like one cassette between many friends. So during the week, the cassette traveled from one friend to the next friend to the next friend. Every day one had it so that they could listen and enjoy and learn. So that kind of attachment to a musical idea and that kind of respect for it and that kind of need to be a part of it definitely creates a scenario where you would arrive there with almost an in-depth knowledge of what is required of you and how to be able to put that on the table.
Now, music cannot survive in a vacuum. So when you started, late 60s, early 70s, India to the West was all about mysticism, an alternative to capitalism, or capitalistic West. Cold War had split the world into two poles. Yehudi Menuhin was a yoga practitioner and was a champion of India. Rock bands from Rolling Stones to Traffic to Moody Blues were all playing the sitar in some of the songs. And then, of course, came George Harrison and this famous Beatles trip. Would you say the genesis of Shakti perhaps lies in the passion of John's fascination for Indian music and his devotion for Sri Chinmaya?
I think the passion for Shakti or any kind of interactive, any kind of, how should I say, a form of music that requires different mindsets to come together to appear as one, comes from the need to be able to learn more. And you still need to reinvent yourself, find new ways to be able to speak the language, tell the same story. So that has to happen. That brought people like Moody Blues or Rolling Stones and stuff to look elsewhere, look outwards, to be able to find new ways to be able to express themselves. Looking eastward was the way to go at that time because I guess the way the clock turns, it was the time for India to be the 12 o'clock. And it's also happened that we had a champion of Indian music in the face of Ravi Shankar, who knew how to be able to familiarize people with what we had to offer. And that's why the world in the early 70s started to change. It started to change and incredible interactions started to take place. And by the mid-70s, I was firmly planted in California, where Grateful Dead and Jefferson Starship and Carlos Santana's and so many other bands were all there, Big Brother and Holding Company, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I just happened to be in the bus when it took off from there, and then ended up with John and ended up with so many other great musicians, including later on Charles Lloyd or Herbie Hancock and Earth, Wind and Fire. Van Morrison was a neighbor.
Oh, wow.
So he would always come home and sit in our living room and not speak for hours. He'd just sit there. And then, after a while, we kind of gave up as to whether we should just sit there with him looking at his face. And we just went about our business.
Okay.
And he just sat there. And then occasionally he would take a piece of paper and write something on it. And then that would be that. So it was interesting. So these kind of things happened.
And how was Jerry Garcia?
Jerry Garcia was great. I remember once falling asleep and waking up to the sound of guitar and voices singing. And I looked up from the floor I was sleeping in, and standing above me were Jerry Garcia and David Crosby. And
Two huge men.
Two huge guys, and they were just trying out this new song.
Okay.
I just like kind of rubbed my eyes and picked up a drum and started playing along. So those days were a whole different world of days. Everyone mingled with each other. There was a club called the Lion's Share. It's very small, about the size of my living room. And you'd walk in there every night, and some night you would see the Sons of Champlin playing, and in would walk Jerry Garcia and plug in his guitar and the Marshall amp and start playing along with them. Another day you'd go there and it would be Carlos Santana playing with some band called A Beautiful Day, just jamming, so that was normal. And so to be there, that's what I meant when I was in the bus and just got
And
a
what a
chance
bus
to,
it was.
Yeah, so, and I guess I was young enough to be be able to bend and move and swivel, for whatever I was required to do. When Bela Fleck and Edgar Meyer sorted me out, it was because they wanted to know more. They were big Shakti fans.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to get together and learn some more about Charles Lloyd, the great jazz saxophonist. He wanted to know about India and called me up and said, will you play with me? And what's great about it is that someone like me got an opportunity to hang out with some of the greatest musical minds of the years of our time period and learn from them and realize that you can never be the best. You just need to get better every day.
And when you would convey this to your father, or in California when you went to
Ali Akbar Khan
Sahab's college, were they open to this, or they were like, who are these guys? I mean, they don't take a shower. They have
Actually, this all started at the Ali Akbar College.
Yeah.
Because on Sundays, there were a lot of Ali Akbar College students who were musicians. So some played guitar, some played drums, some played marimbas, vibraphones, whatnot. So it came to my mind that why not we get together and do jam sessions. Yeah. It kind of was an idea that came from my studio days in Bollywood.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Because when I was in 13, 14 years old, I was playing in Bollywood films where such combination of instruments were normal for us. So arriving there, so I said to Ali Akbar Khan Sahab, I said, Khan Sahab, can I do this? And he said, sure, why not? So every Sunday we would start to do it. The word got around. So next thing I know, Mickey Hart, the Grateful Dead drummer, showed up. Yeah, and next thing I know, Armando Peraza, the Carlos Santana percussionist, showed up, and so on and so forth. Hamza Eldin, a Nubian percussionist, showed up. Ola Tunji, the Nigerian maestro, showed up. And then things started to happen that way.
And when you met John for the first time, what was that conversation, that let's do something together? Or you've heard his music, he's heard yours, and you got talking, and then one thing led to
none
the
of
other?
that.
Okay.
None of that. I was in New York, in St. Mark's Place, doing a workshop at a place called the House of Musical Traditions. Now, John was interested in finding out about Indian music. And he had made contact with a Veena player in Wesleyan University in Connecticut and was about to go there, but he thought maybe he should prepare himself a little bit more. So he found out about my workshop and showed up. I had no knowledge who John McLaughlin was.
Oh, okay.
No, I just arrived in America and so on. And so I was doing my class, and Hank brought John and said, this is John McLaughlin. He's a guitar player, and he wants to take your class. I said, okay. But then John says to me, I want to learn about raga, some sargams and, scales and things. Can you teach me that? Now here I am, a tabla player, and this guitar player is asking me to teach him singing. Something that, I can never do to save my life. So but I couldn't say no. So I said, yeah, okay, sure. So I know some scales. My father was a singer, and he'd given me some info. So I told him about that. So that was it. And then, of course, a few months later, a call. "Oh, this is John. And I'm here in San Francisco. I'm playing a concert. Would you like to come and see it?" And I said, "Of course." And I walked into the concert hall, and it was the Mahavishnu Orchestra. And my jaw just dropped, and I said, "Oh my God, what did I do?" It was like that. And so, anyway, so I saw the concert, and it was just one of the most fantastic performances that I have seen. And at the end of the concert, I went and saw him backstage, and he said, "I'd like to meet Ali Akbar Khan." And so I said, "Sure." And so next day, he had to rent a car, and he drove up, and we went to see Ali Akbar Khan Sahab. And there, at Ali Akbar Khan Sahab's living room, where we were just talking, Ali Akbar Khan Sahab says to John, "Do you have your instrument with you?" He said, "I have an acoustic guitar in the car." He says, "So why don't you play for me?" So John went and brought his guitar in, and then looked at me and said, "Will you play with me?" And that's what happened. So we played together
In front of
the great Ustad Ali Akbar Khan Sahab. And when we were playing together, it was like we have been always playing together. It was like this was done before, that we have been doing this. We just like came back together again to carry on. It felt that, intimate, that close, that the deep knowledge of each other's ability was right there. And John says to me that it was at that time that he decided that we have to get together and make a record and play concerts. And so when he got back to New York, and he met the Veena player, and Veena player had a nephew, Al Shankar. And so they got together, and then it was John's energy that brought Shakti together. And that's what happened. And then when we played the concert, Shakti, one rehearsal in the afternoon, concert in the evening. And at that time, John had his spiritual guru, and who had given him the name Mahavishnu. So the spiritual guru called the band Turiyananda Sangeet. It's kind of hard to Sri Chinmoy. Yeah. Okay, so Turiyananda Sangeet played a concert, and then we left, and then John decided this has to happen more. So he arranged for another concert in Southampton College on Long Island. And that was a concert that was recorded, and that became our first album, a live album. And that's when we came together. Album was made. I thought, okay, that's done. But then John's management called and said, there's a possibility of a tour. And my problem was I was teaching at the Ali Akbar College. How do I get out and go? So I talked to Ali Akbar Khan Sahab, and he said, this is a good opportunity for you. So as long as you can make up your classes, somehow figure out a way to do it, go, do it. And I think he understood that if I get a little well-known, more people will come to the college to study, and it made sense in that manner. So that's how it happened. There was no plan to start something. There was no plan to set things up and calling musicians to come and join the band, none of that. It just...
And along the way, Turiyananda
became Shakti. Because...
Okay.
because, well, it's the purest form of female energy, Shakti. And the band kind of appeared to percolate that kind of energy. And so when we were listening to the record, we just said the energy is so incredible. And then somebody said, what's the Hindi word for it? And one of us said Shakti, and why don't we call it Shakti? So that's what happened. And
but Shakti is gender neutral. I mean,
yeah, it is gender neutral. Yeah, of course.
It doesn't have to be a Stri Shakti or a Purush Shakti. It's just Shakti. And
it is definitely, everything is gender neutral.
Correct.
When it comes to our mythology.
Correct. That's true. Now, I've heard this urban legend, and since you were there, I wanted to clarify this.
Oh.
John was Mahavishnu.
Yeah.
Santana was Devadeep.
Yep.
Apparently, Roberta Flack was also a fan and a devotee, rather, and she was also given a name.
I don't know what name she was given.
But she was given a name.
She was given a name, that's true. Okay. But yeah, she kept it pretty, there are people who believe that Guru has ordained baptize them into and given them this name, and it's for them. And it doesn't have to be for everyone.
For everyone.
But like Carlos Santana never advertised himself as Dave Deep, even though that name was known that he has that name.
Correct.
But John is a very passionate man in the sense when he delves into something, he delves really deeply into it, and he becomes that. And that's what's amazing about John, is that when we first got together and we started playing concerts, it wasn't Shankar, me, and Viku who were able to cross over and do stuff that was familiar to John. It was John who came over to our way of working and playing music in the way if you see Shakti's photos, we are sitting cross-legged on the riser, and John's playing the guitar, and he played it like as if he was playing the veena. And playing Indian music and ragas and scales and et cetera, and knew all the rhythm cycles and whatever we do in our Indian music, he was familiar with it. And even if he wasn't, he was able to latch onto it in an instant. And so it was almost like playing with an Indian musician.
I wanted to ask you that, as you said, that over the first 3 albums, the influences changed because you were also getting influenced by different genres. There was a cross-pollination of ideas. The people involved were also changed. You had Ramnath Raghavan in the early years.
Yeah. Not early years, just for that first concert.
Okay. You had Hariprasad Chaurasia, who did a tour. Mm-hmm. You had Vikuji, who had to come back to India and then rejoined. Mm-hmm. Selva Ganesh, who now plays with you all. He came later. Srinivasji passed away. Shankar joined. There were gaps in the mid-80s for almost a decade.
Yeah.
And yet you came back together and, 50 years, recorded an album. Did you feel in those years there was that itch?
Well, even in those years, there were albums made. What happened was I asked Hariji and John to play on my album, Making Music. And that kind of spawned the idea of Hariji joining and us doing the Shakti thing, with Vikuji coming back on, and we recorded in London that live concert that became an album, and Hariji played with us on tour. But he couldn't do an extensive, be a member of the band kind of thing, and made sense. I mean, the legend like him, he already is the bandmaster himself. Yeah. So then we had to go on tour and do something. So what should we do? So we tried to find Al Shankar. And Al Shankar was busy producing so many different things, so he couldn't do it. And so that's when we got Yushri Nivas. And he played with us for a long time until we finally decided that it's time to add another layer. And that layer was Shankar Mahadevan, the vocal layer. And but each member of the band, fortunately for us, we picked the person because that person to us represented what Shakti is all about. And our guess was correct. And so each member just fitted right in. Vikuji couldn't do the tour when Srinivas came in because he said he was getting older and he wants to teach more and so on and so forth. So he said, take my son. So Selva Ganesh came on, and again, Selva grew up on that music and knew the energy and everything. So
yeah,
fine.
It was pretty symbiotic.
Yeah.
The album, I guess, started during COVID, or at least the initial recordings did. How easy or difficult was it to be in different parts of the world, yet, was it all Zoom, or was it...
Well, the thing is...
The creative process, especially.
Shakti mainly is a performing band.
Yeah.
It thrives, it arrives, it really happens in concert, in live. And so there are many live albums of Shakti. So keeping that in mind, this was a venture into a dark tunnel, hoping that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And so to be able, how to create that live energy, because we were used to sitting in a room, facing each other, in a recording studio and playing live, and then playing each song 4, 5, 6 times and picking the best. There were never like, okay, take half of this or a quarter of that and add to that. No. We always start to end, even if it had a little misstep, fine, it's okay. But it should be a complete statement. So that's how we work. So yeah, I mean, it was a shot in the dark, basically. And even though most of this stuff was done individually, the rhythm section, which is me and Salva Ganesh, we actually worked together. Him in Chennai and me in San Francisco.
Okay.
And not that we played together simultaneously, but he was able to be on that other side and me here, and I would lay down my track and he was listening, and then reverse, and he would put his track down and I would be listening. And I think that helped in some ways to bring the album together, because the rhythm energy, because of us working together, was palpable. It ignited just the right amount of spark for the melody players and the singer to be able to come forth and do their thing. But actually, I have to say, John and I had gone through that process just like 8 months before. We did an album called Is That So?, which involved me, John McLaughlin, and Shankar Mahadevan. It was a trio album.
Okay.
So we did that same way. So therefore, it was great that we had Salva Ganesh and Shankar Mahadevan, the studio junkies, who helped us put this all together.
So it's now my turn to say, is that so? But before we proceed, we are midway through this conversation. It's so enriching. It's amazing, isn't it, to see from when you started from California, music, analog recording to multi-track to now technology, taking you to a level where you don't have to be even in the studio. You can record from home and partner with somebody sitting in probably Denmark or Norway and somebody sitting in Spain, mixing it all together, and magic happens.
Frightening, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. At one level. Yeah.
At one level it is. I mean, I really, all through that period of making Shakti, both John and I would once in a while talk about it, and I say, I hope we can, create the same energy that we do when we're playing live. And I guess we kept saying that to each other because it felt like that wasn't happening.
Oh,
but
it did, okay.
Yeah, because when we hear the record, when we hear the music in those days, before we mixed it, edited it, and all that stuff, it felt like, oh, there's something missing, some spontaneity is not there, some, spark of interaction, live interaction is missing. So anyway, we were always concerned about that. But in the end, that's not what the album was all about. The album was about being a studio album. We hadn't made a studio album in 45 years. And so we were there to make a studio album, and therefore we were able to make a studio album with the present day technology, not technology 45 years ago.
All art forms, including music, is in one way cyclical in nature. So we see trends and influences keep coming back. There is again a massive influence of Indian and Western classical or pure jazz among youngsters these days, but they're interpreting it in a very different way. Is that natural, or do you think it's a distortion?
I don't think it's a different way. I think it's a more informed way, because today's audience has everything available at their fingertips. They can go on Google okay, today they're going to go listen to somebody, Bonnie Raitt, for instance, a blues concert. They can listen to 18 of her songs in the afternoon while they're taking a shower and getting ready and all that stuff, and familiarize themselves and know exactly what to expect and what's coming their way. So the audiences are much more informed. And because they are much more informed, I think that's what has helped us to be able to PR ourselves to them in a way where they are able to then look at our salient features and see what it is about us that appeals to them.
So this era of music, this era of hyper-information,
I think it's a renaissance.
It's a renaissance, okay.
Yeah.
It's a very strong statement you're making. But then,
on a global level.
Yeah, sure. But does then the concept of rich legacy still hold good?
Of course, it does, because the core will always remain. I mean, you have to draw upon somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't. So even when you are talking about a loop, or you're talking about some kind of a processing, or some kind of a sound bite of somebody, like a tabla sample or something.
Yeah.
You still have to know about it, how to use it, how to utilize it, where the downbeat is, where the halfway point of the cycle is, and whether it melodically matches, and so on and so forth. So in order to do that, you have to have some basic knowledge of what our music is. I mean, look, people still go to listen to Indian classical music.
Do they?
Oh, yeah. By droves. I mean, the audiences for Indian traditional art form has grown by, I would say, 200%.
In India or in the West?
All over the world, even in India.
But you talk to your peers, most of them seem to be groaning and saying that classical music needs to find new followers. What do? We are like a dying breed.
Because what they don't understand is that what they're dealing with. For instance, Indian classical music is a chamber art form. In other words, it thrives in an intimate atmosphere. You can't put it in a stadium. Yeah. So therefore, you shouldn't compare it to the music that sits in the stadium. So you have to realize that the people who were playing for 5,000 people 40 years ago are now playing for 50,000 people in a stadium, big rock pop bands. And then people who were playing for 200 people, classical musicians, they're playing for 10,000 people, 8,000 people, 7,000 people. That's a growth that's much more than the rock and pop growth.
Yeah.
So that is there. There's at least 1,200 to 1,300 concerts a year of Indian classical music that take place. The point is this. It is somewhat of media's fault. It is also, to some extent, the artist's fault, who are not yet able to utilize the platforms available to them to be able to project themselves. Not all artists are able to do that. Some of them are able to do that, but not all. So there's that. Also, like for instance, I had a question that was asked to me some time back. There doesn't seem to be girl percussionists. Why is that? The point is, the person who asked me the question did not do their research. There are plenty of girl percussionists around. You just didn't go and look for them.
Yeah.
So if you don't look for them, you will think that it doesn't exist, that there's some problem somewhere. So this is the thing. And I just feel that, for instance, I tell people, don't put me up in a 15,000 seat arena. Don't. I won't charge you the kind of money that requires that. I will charge you the kind of money where you can put me in a 2,500 seat hall, and that's fine. And we will sell out. And we do.
Yeah.
So
I saw you and Elijah Kumar in NCPA.
So keeping that in mind is very important. I mean, in India, there's a saying that, you should only stretch as much as your sheet. Jitna chadar hai, utna phailaiye. So that's the thing. So I really feel that people who want to take Indian classical music and make it into pop form of music are asking for a bit too much.
Why I asked you this is because there's this narrative that you moved to the US at the early years of your career, as did Pandit Ravi Shankar, who moved at its peak. New Jersey was Ustad Valad Khan's second home.
Yeah.
Clearly, there seems to have been a problem of mainstream recognition of all these maestros, including you, in India, where classical music is concerned.
I beg to differ.
Okay. And now we hear about abject mismanagement of concerts overall. So are things that bleak?
Who says there's abject mismanagement? It just does not make sense to me. You came to the concert with Niladri and me. Was it mismanaged? not at all. So that's what I'm...
And even the Shakti 50th.
It was fine. Yeah, there was no issues there.
Yes.
I just played a concert with Niladri again in Hyderabad, 2600 hall.
But is it because you're Zakir Hussain?
No,
Or,
no,
and
no.
not an upcoming struggling artist?
No. Like, for instance, Niladri does concerts on his own. Purbayan does concerts on his own. There are some incredible young musicians who are performing all over the country. Regular Rakesh Chaurasia does concerts on his own. And they are all performing. But it's like, I don't know. I mean, there are musicians maybe who don't think that they're being represented well, or there are organizers who might feel that they want more than they actually should look for. It's many things that come together. I beg to differ that we are not, that Ravi Shankar ji or Vilayat Khan Sahab or Ali Akbar Khan Sahab for that matter were not household names when it came to classical fans.
Correct.
In this country. They were. They most certainly were. And I'm no different. I get stopped for autographs all over the place, whether it's airport or train station or shopping centers or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's not that is an issue. And also, you have to realize when you talk about having moved to another part of the world, in summer, which is 3 months, and monsoon, which is again 3 months, nothing really happens in India.
Yeah.
Nothing really happens in India. Summer months and monsoon months are concert and festival months abroad.
Yeah.
So people go there to play. Festivals and big jazz festivals take place and concert halls are full. Their season begins September till March or April. So that's what happens. But come November, like birds flying south for the winter, we'd come home. And then we'd be here till March playing concerts and being available to do all that stuff. So I don't think you can fault Indian musicians for wanting to go out and what do they do for 6 months? They have to earn a living. They don't have a 9-to-5 job, So and so they have to earn a living.
True.
So they go find the cricketers do that nowadays. They go play cricket everywhere in the world, and it's become a 12-month thing, and it's
absolutely.
So it's the same thing. So,
but would you say that the freedom as art that you had as artists is shrinking as more and more music labels, production companies, the paraphernalia is taking over and somewhat choking the creative processes, and this impacts more the young independent musicians who are coming up, who are not straitjacketed. You can't put them classical or Carnatic or Hindustani or,
How many young people have become superstars on YouTube? Not by the help of record companies or whatnot. They've become big superstars. Millions of views, So it's kind of difficult to say that, but I imagine you don't really need a record company anymore. You don't. You can make a record at home.
And release it on Spotify.
Yeah, and you can put it on Spotify. You can, whatever, you can register it. You can do whatever you want to do. And there are a lot of young musicians who are doing that. It is true that audiences the world over are not physically buying CDs. The actual.
Correct.
They're just downloading them.
Yeah.
Right? So, and they are not downloading the whole CDs. They're downloading a piece of music from it, the one that they want, and so on and so forth. So therefore, you're not seeing $5 a CD as your royalty. You're seeing 50 cents. Yeah. And so yes, so that's what's happening. And it's true that something like Spotify or Amazon or whatever it is, they're taking the lion's share of whatever is happening. But at least your product is out there. And the point I'm trying to make is that the product that you put out there is basically you doing your PR. You're not looking to make money from the product that you put out there. You're looking to make money from playing concerts.
You play with a lot of younger musicians. I mean, from Niladri to Rakesh Chaurasia, you've jammed with Gino Banks.
Well, I'm available cheap.
What drives you still? And what would you say makes them different from your peers or musicians of your generation?
Ah, God, to quote an American saying, they kick my butt.
Can't be.
No, I have
That's
to.
not
No,
possible.
no, it's true. The young musician, look at it this way. I'm 19 years old. I arrive in America. And it's my first look at real jazz musicians or rock musicians or blues musicians, right? Now I have to learn that process. Okay? So after 17 years or whatever it is of doing one thing, now have to restart again and learn. Okay? Someone like Rakesh Chaurasia, he is learning Rag Bhopali, but at the same time learning an equivalent scale in Western classical music. And then also learning how a pentatonic scale like Rag Bhopali is played in Japan or played in Indonesia or played in Bulgaria and so on, and how it is utilized and the improv facilities available in it. He's simultaneously learning all that. So by the time he's 19, he's got about 5 times more information than I ever did when I was 19. So
But that's because you didn't have access to that kind of technology.
exactly. But they do, and so what happens is they have a what should I say, a concoction of information that puts together a panoramic global knowledge of what a piece of music is and can be. So therefore, their ability to convey that information is much more in depth than I was at their age. Okay, so when that happens, and I play with them, I'm seeing nooks and corners in that statement that I never knew existed. And when that happens, I have to react to it. And when I have to react to it, I have to find a way to be able to react to it. It shows me facets of myself which I had ignored, right under my nose, but I'd ignored it. So I find it and I bring it to the table and I polish it up and I say, okay, here it is. Let me work with you. I'm learning and I'm growing as an artist and I'm reinventing myself and I'm making myself valid for the time today. I'm not a relic anymore.
You never were.
And that happens because I'm working with these young musicians. And so these kind of things help.
You also experiment from wide array of friends and guests, from Mickey Hart to Tabla Beat Science. Very different musically as well. You know, the 2 albums.
Yeah.
How do you balance the 2 worlds? Or is it the same?
We never considered that we were playing a certain type of music. That's how Shakti was.
Yeah.
And when it came to playing with Mickey, it was the same thing. And Tabla Beat Science was the same way. There was one idea, the seed idea, that Bill Aswell and I had, and which was, at that point, there was a lot of DJ-type people who were using samples. And they were using sitar samples and tabla samples and flute samples and sarangi samples, and they were playing them at ridiculous tempos and speeds and creating music. So we talked and we said, you know,
Krish Kale.
why can't we do, Kirsch was part of
Kirsch was, yeah.
and Talvin Singh.
Yeah.
And why can't we do similar stuff, but with live musicians, not samples? And so the main character of that would be tabla. So the album started with just me in the studio playing tabla on a click track. And then slowly layers were built on top of it. And Bill then produced it and mixed it and so on and so forth. So difference, none. in terms of making both albums. The same process, when I first walked into Mickey's studio, he handed me a drum. Not my tabla, but he handed me a drum and said, play this. Because he had found this drum and he didn't know what to do with it. So he said, maybe Zakir can figure out what to do with it. So he said, play this.
With a...
No, it was a hand drum.
Okay.
Of some sort, it was a tube-like thing. Okay, so I kind of, messed with this for a little while and figured out something and I played with. So that's how we started recording it. And then David Crosby came in and put something on, and Grace Slick came in and sang on it, and Jerry Garcia came and put the guitar on, and so on and so forth. That happened. So the process was the same, but never in our minds and to each other, we ever said, you know what, let's make a jazz percussion album or a rock percussion album or an Afro percussion album, nothing. It was just what was happening. And when it turned out finally, even we didn't know what it was going to be. And it just turned out whatever it was. So, yeah. So when you are in that kind of a state of mind, it is so easy to be able to just ride the stream.
Yeah.
And let it take you wherever it wants to take you. And if you're open to having that experience.
And fun.
And have fun, then that's what happens.
It is said that arts and culture, music, would remain insulated from things like AI. Now, in 2024, that line seems to be getting...
I'm sorry, it was already kind of blurred 25 years ago.
25 years ago?
Well, what is a computer? It's an AI. What's a cell phone? It's an AI.
Okay.
It is. I mean, what is a satellite phone that the military's used? I mean, the digital. I mean, you sent a lunar thing onto the moon. Those computers were so huge, but they were still AI, artificial intelligence.
True. But they never replicated music. Now that is happening.
But that was already happening. Where did you think the samples came from that DJs used? 15 years ago, 18 years ago, 20 years ago. All the samples that they utilized and bunches of records that they mixed and matched together seamlessly and put out. So AI has already existed. And it's not like unusual. It's just that because now there are technological companies that want to sell it to people, they're making it sound like it's something totally new. There's something totally new. It's already been there.
But can AI be leveraged to address challenges such as qualified teachers?
I think that AI is a good tool in the hands of somebody who understands the organic creative process and the electronic creative process. Like someone like, say, Shankar Mahadevan again, who understands the technology and is also totally deeply immersed in the organic way of being able to make music.
Right.
Okay? So someone like him can put these elements together and allow for AI to be able to interpret based upon his imagination as to what that interpretation should be. Okay? So in the hands of someone who's totally uninformed, I don't know what that will become. I don't know if AI can be just, at this point, trusted enough to be able to be left to its own device. I don't know that. And I'm not saying that it's going to harm anything, but...
it's uncharted territory.
It's uncharted territory, but...
And you also don't see your 5 avatars of each one of you playing a live concert 10 years from now in a metaverse.
What an idea. No, I mean, it's like this. I mean, if it helps to preserve what the old maestros was. I mean, look at it this way. You're listening to a recording of Rasulan Bai, a Thumri or Kajri she's singing. Wouldn't it be incredible if you could watch her while she's singing? And so if suddenly what you're hearing and that photograph of Rasulan Bai comes alive and the expressions of her nuances that she's putting into the music are being conveyed visually, it's possible that your experience
Will be far superior.
will be enhanced 100-fold. Yes. But then that has to be in the hand of somebody who knows how to do that.
Is it ironic that, coming back to Grammys, that Indians seem to be winning Grammys for something that's, if I may call it, not core, but something which is, the word that you use, world music. Somebody's coined it or put it in a bucket. From Pandit Ravishankar Ji's to Vishwa Mohan Bhatt to A.R. Rahman, even you. It's largely for world music, crossover collaborations, and not for Hindustani classical music.
Because there's no category. In the Grammy system that says Indian classical
Or
music.
classical music. For
Yeah,
that.
it doesn't. There is no category. And that's one of the reasons why for the last 50 years, an Indian classical music album was not in there.
Right.
And the old Shakti albums never made it because the category of
World music.
did not exist and they didn't quite accept it as jazz.
Right.
And I don't know why that is so. I think that will eventually change because the Western world realizes that there's 1.4 billion people living in India who are, hungry for information and to see their kind be acknowledged. And the more they are acknowledged there, the more TV time they can sell to the ad agencies. and maybe they'll get to a point where they may create an Indian music or an Asian music category. There is a Latin music category which is there.
Yeah.
But there is no Asian music category. Maybe that will be introduced at some point.
Right.
And it may happen.
But when you go on to the stage to receive a Grammy, is there an added responsibility, an added weight that you're representing the country, or you are a global citizen?
You kind of try to tell yourself that you're a global citizen, but in your heart of hearts, you're proud to be, from where you are. And that is front and center at that time. For me, it was amazing to be on that and being an Indian. And I've lived in America for so many years, but I still have my Indian passport. I haven't changed that. So I'm not an American citizen, I'm an Indian citizen. And to be able to, have India represented and flying that flag. We brought in 8 Grammys home, and which has never happened before. And having 2 guys win, one winning 2 and one winning 3, that has never happened before. So it's like what A.R. Rahman said. It's raining Grammys for India. And it sure was, and it was raining outside too. But in any case...
and I'm sure in the after party, a lot of artists came and
we had a great time with each other. And, we had slap back and back slapping was going on and kidding and photos and everything. But at that moment, it was such an amazing feeling to be an Indian.
Yeah.
It just felt very special.
The last thing I wanted to ask you, and since we come back to India after touring the whole world, 2 things that are the biggest examples of India's secular fabric are Indian classical music and Bollywood. For decades, non-Hindu artists made compositions in praise of Hindu gods.
Yeah.
Learnt stotras and shlokas and sang them.
Yeah.
And garnered acclaim. The word itself is Hindustani classical music, right? Now, there is
Hindustani Shastriya Sangeet.
Shastriya Sangeet, yes. There is no way to separate the various religious influence in it. In fact, I don't know whether there's a place of religion in it in the first place. Now, for an artist such as yourself, does it therefore hurt when you see the social fabric, or what the social fabric of this country has come to?
The social fabric of our country is entirely in the hands of the people of India, my fellow citizens. And it has to be stated, designed, put forth by us as citizens. If we don't, then we tear. And if we do, then it's a solid blanket that we all wear. And
It still is a solid blanket.
it still is a solid blanket. When it comes to the world of music, it's a religion unto itself. I mean, I guess a cliche thing to say is that it's, in some ways, we are all Sufis who believe in universality. I mean, I'm playing with Bela Fleck and Edgar Meyer, who are two Jewish musicians, and I'm a Muslim. But that doesn't stop us from working with each other. Playing with John is the same thing. Playing with Shankar,
yeah.
you know, it doesn't matter. I think I've said this before also, but it would be interesting if the world, I think a world would do well if they would kind of take the page from the music world. How we live with each other, how we interact with each other, how there are no fences, no borders, how the language doesn't matter. And so if the world would, in some ways, find a way to be able to pick and choose from how the creative art world lives, maybe there is a possibility for it to be a much more healthier place. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I'm happy and proud that I'm an Indian, and I know that India, at its core, is a country that believes in universality, and I'm pretty sure that feeling is rampant. All we need to do as citizens is to be able to show it.
On that note, thank you so very, very much, Ustad Zakir Hussain, Zakir or ZG.
ZG. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Great to see you, G.
Great. Jeet. On that beat, this is Arijit Burman signing off. That's it for today. You were listening to Tabla, Tech and Triumph only on The Morning Brief. This episode was produced by Vinay Joshi, sound designed by Rajas Naik and Indranil Bhattacharjee. Executive producers Anupriya Nair, Anirban Chaudhary and yours truly. The Morning Brief streams on listening platforms of your choice, that is, on Amazon Prime Music, JioSaavn, Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, and of course ET's own audio platform, ET Play. It drops every Tuesdays, Thursdays and Fridays. But since you have been craving for more, we are trying to get you some more stories and interviews on The Morning Brief, like we did this midweek on Wednesday. So keep listening and have a good weekend ahead. Till then, goodbye and good luck. All clips used in this episode belong to their respective owners. Credits mentioned in the description.